So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, Diana. So I follow you on Instagram, and basically the reason I wanted to interview you today is I saw one of your posts. I believe it was last month or a couple weeks before that, where you posted, you tested positive for COVID-19. So really quick, just kind of maybe introduce yourself and just maybe your reaction when you tested positive.
Um, so yeah, I also follow you back on Instagram, and I also see that you do a lot of like interviews. I've seen you do like on the street interviews with people about the COVID. And yeah, so a few weeks ago, I was diagnosed positive with COVID-19. This was late March, and I was in quarantine for a little bit over 2 weeks after that. I live in Massachusetts, which is the third hotspot in the United States, right? So I think it's New York, New Jersey, and then Massachusetts. And then COVID's affected me personally, not just because obviously I tested positive for it, so I went through the motions with that, and the sickness also because the majority of people that I know personally have also been infected with COVID.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back. So this is a pretty big deal. So
Mhm.
first, um, what kind of symptoms were you feeling?
I think it varies. The severity just varies with everyone, and I think it has a lot to do with obviously where you live, age, if you have any underlying illnesses and things like that. My symptoms, I would say, came on very, very suddenly and very rapidly. So I was fine, because you always say, this is not going to happen to me. "Oh, I know this is a worldwide pandemic. This is not going to happen to me. I'm going to be totally fine. I'm young, and so I'm going to be good." But so I had been living like that, even though we were already getting warnings from the federal government and also from like state level. But I was just chilling and kind of just doing my thing. And then I went out a few days before I started getting like really sick. I went out. I literally just went to the store. It's down the street from my house. I went to the store. When I got back in the car, I started getting a severe migraine. Now, I wasn't worried right away because I suffer from migraines already. And so I was like, fine. And then I told my sister, I was like, I think I want to go home. I started getting severe migraines and I felt really dizzy. And my sister was like, all right. So we came back to the house. It was literally just out at the store for like 5 minutes. I came back home. And by the time I got home, I was sitting down on the kitchen table and I had to stand up and like walk away because I felt like I was going to pass out. And so by the time I got up, I was really dizzy and I couldn't really see in front of me. So like I'm saying, I was completely fine and then sick. Like and then when I was in the car, when I'm telling you that I felt the migraine, I literally felt like I was breathing normally. And then all of a sudden my breathing started to change. And I felt like I just like I felt the moment of like contact with the virus. I don't know, obviously, if I had already had it and it had been dormant for a few days before experiencing the side effects and the symptoms, but I definitely know that when I did get the symptoms, it's like a shockwave that comes over you. And I immediately, like I said, migraines is the first thing, and everybody that I know that's had it's migraines first, and then dizziness, and then again, there's a whole spectrum of symptoms that you can have from it. But at the beginning, I initially just had migraines, dizziness. That's all I had for like a day and a half, 2 days. And then everything started getting worse.
And let's say when you got to the doctor, was
hmm
it did they do the COVID test right away, or was it like a couple of days? What was that process like when you got to the doctors?
So again, even though I had felt the migraines and dizziness, I was still at home. Like I did not think that I had COVID, out of all things. And
Hmm.
especially because I didn't really know a lot of people at that time, or a lot of people in Massachusetts didn't really have it. So I was like, this is not that. So I even ignored that. And the fact that I even called my doctor is because my mother was feeling really sick too. And she went to the emergency room and they told her, so this is a separate story, but they told her that they actually couldn't do the testing on her,
Hmm.
that she just presented the symptoms and to go home and be in quarantine, which I think is pretty irresponsible, because if you feel like somebody does have COVID, I mean, if you're able to have the means to test them, you should. But there's a whole separate story. So she went to the emergency room. She came back around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was already going through the motions. I felt so hot and sweaty. I was panicking. And when she told me what they had told her, I was like, I have to call my doctor. At 4 o'clock in the morning, obviously, I know that they're not going to be there, but I do have a neurologist because I do have other underlying illnesses. So I do have a neurologist here in Massachusetts, and I called their office There's a doctor that's on call for that neurologist. I spoke to them. I spoke to several operators. Eventually, I got a number that I got to call in the morning, and I told them, just a little bit of everything that I was experiencing, and I told them, because I do have, number one, I do have neuropathy, and I've had this for several years, and it's due to autoimmune disease. And because of that, I'm a higher risk. So they told me to come in right away. And you don't go to the main hospital. You don't go to the emergency room. They told me I went to a special clinic. It was apart from the hospital, and that's where I went in. They took my temperature, my vitals, everything. I saw the doctor, and the doctor determined that because of my symptoms, even though they weren't the most severe, I did present some symptoms because of my symptoms, and because of I was at high risk because of autoimmune disease. They decided that I needed to get the test done right away, and so I did. I was only there. I only saw the doctor for like maybe 10 minutes while she evaluated me, and got that done right away. Did COVID testing and flu testing. Even though I get the flu shot, I did get both of those. It wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun experience, the testing, but I did get it done, and they told me it would take anywhere between 3 to 4 days. But I actually got the results back not even 24 hours later.
Really? Then what was the first reaction when you tested positive? Where was it really hard to believe just because it's something that kind of you just hear on the news, and then how you said it kind of just
Yeah.
hit you with it?
Yeah, so I had already, because I do follow the news a little bit, and because of what they had told my mother, I was like, I think that I have this. And because by the time that I went there, I mean, we've all had the common cold and things like that. So, but I knew that this wasn't it. You know what I mean? Just of how sick I felt. I knew that it wasn't a cold. And while I was there, after they did the testing, they actually did take me in an ambulance to the emergency room so they could do more blood work. They gave me medication because my migraine was just off the hook. Like, I couldn't even open my eyes. That's how severe the migraine was. I felt an immense pounding in my head. My whole body was just in so much pain. I felt so numb. It was just a whole mix of symptoms. And so obviously I knew it was something more severe than just a common cold. And so when they were telling me, and the doctor in the emergency room told me, we obviously don't know right now for sure because we don't have the results of the test, but because of your blood work, we are
Mm.
pretty sure that you have it. So they spoke to me, and they were, I mean, just to speak about the healthcare workers right now, they're doing a hell of a job. They're under immense pressure. And so they were really nice to me. They took good care of me while I was there. And so they did explain to me. So they were very realistic. They were like, we do think that you do have it, especially because of what they told your mother and your symptoms and, your blood work. So they were like, they just gave me instructions before they discharged me. And they just told me, just wait because you might not. But
Mm.
just wait until we call you, and then we'll give you directions from there. And so, like I said, less than 24 hours later, they called me. They told me that I had it. I wasn't in shock because I expected it. And then it's just kind of came into the realization where it's like, all right, well, now I'm a number. I'm part of the statistics of the people that had or has COVID-19. And then I kind of just let that simmer in for a minute, and I thought, like, what am I gonna do? I was like, well, right now, and the only thing that I can do is just try to take care of myself, which is there's no medication for it. If you're not really severe and you're not in the hospital, they just say take Tylenol. But I was taking cold medication, I was taking Tylenol, and I was taking my migraine medication. And honestly, I felt so numb and I was in so much pain. I didn't have time to be shocked. I didn't have time for anything like that. I was like, I just have to get over this and get better. And so I do think that while I was in the stage of quarantine and feeling really sick, I was very, very, very put off by things that people were saying online. Just like a lot of conspiracy theorists and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that a lot of that stuff is incredible because it very well could be, but I was just so annoyed at the fact that I was feeling so sick and I had all these people online trying to tell me what it was, or try to diagnose my symptoms through online and tell me what I do or don't have. And so that's the only thing that I would say would be negatives. Like, I was just very annoyed at that. But other than that, like I said, I wasn't shocked and I knew it was coming, so I just kind of had to deal with it.
Well, here you kind of actually, in a way, you kind of actually stepped into a question I was going to ask later, but we could get into it now. Is how do you feel? Someone that has COVID-19, and then you go online, and then people are calling it conspiracy theory. Some people think it's completely fake. Just what are your thoughts when you see that?
Like I said, at the time while I was having it and I was going through the motions and I would like go on my phone and check it out, I was just like, I would be so annoyed. I'm like, how are you gonna tell me this isn't real? Like, I'm having it. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just a flu. there's flu-like symptoms, yeah, but a lot of the times, like, I think people could be very insensitive if it's not going on around them. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
If it's not going on around them, they don't know anybody who personally has it. They're very insensitive, and therefore, I feel like they're more gullible to believe any conspiracy theory that they see online. And like I said, I'm not saying everything that people say online is not true. I'm not saying that. A lot of it could be based on fact. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying at that time while I was going through it, I did not like um, people trying to tell me what I didn't have or what I did have. And then somebody posted online, I saw, how do you even know that you had COVID? Did you even see your test? And I'm like, well, yeah, I actually did see my test. I don't know, well, my health insurance in here in Massachusetts in my healthcare, I literally can just go on a website and I go online, I check my medical records, and it says right there, like, all the testing I've had, and it says COVID-19, and it says positive, and it's like the whole outline is showing you why you're positive, things like that. So I'm like, yo, I actually have seen my test. I actually do know that I have it. And like I said, I just found that incredibly annoying at that time being. Now that I'm over it now, and I've been, over the quarantine, and I'm doing a lot better, obviously, I feel like I said, a lot of people are basing their theories on some things that can't be ignored. And I feel like some things might be credible. It's just like when you're sick and you're going through the motions, you really don't want to hear it. And when people start to doubt you and say, you might not have, it's like, no, well, I know that I have it and I can feel it and I'm going through the motions and I've seen the test. And not only that, almost every family member in my immediate family has had it
Wow.
except for two people. And some of them has affected them severely, physically, obviously, emotionally, mentally. So yeah, everybody can have their own opinion. That's of course. But at the same time, while I was going through it, I was very frustrated. Now that I'm over it, eh. I understand what people say, the things they say, but it's like COVID is real. I have it. If we're gonna go into discussion about how it happened, when it happened, who did it, that's a whole other issue. But does it exist? Yes. Is it happening? Yes. And I'm feeling it firsthand because, like I said, I live in one of the main hotspots in the United States that has, like, most people that were affected with it.
Then my next question is, well, do you still have COVID-19? Because you look good, you look healthy, and or
Yeah.
like, what was like kind of your process to like feeling better, or where you at right now?
So, like I said, there's different levels of severity. With me, I felt like the most, after I got the testing, I was really, really sick for 3 days afterwards. But even if, like, you start to feel better, you still have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. That's just like the normal. Some people are in quarantine for up to like 4 or 5 weeks. It just depends on the person. For me, they just told me to keep taking my temperature, and once I stopped having fever, then obviously the symptoms would subside and I would start getting better. And that's what happened. I had a fever for like about a week afterwards, and then little by little, the symptoms just kind of started going away. But that's what it was for me. And then I didn't feel any symptoms for like 4 days. So I was like, oh, I'm good. And it's going to be, quarantine. It's going to be over soon. So I'm going to be able to go out. Not necessarily I don't want to be out on the streets. Obviously, we have to take caution. But like, I'm going to be able to go to the pharmacy or to the store. And then I started feeling like I was getting a cold again. I started feeling like I have a sore throat. I was like, uh-oh. And so the nurse called me and I told her, and she said, oh, you're gonna have to be in quarantine for 3 more days, see if the symptoms go away. If they don't go away, be in quarantine for another 3 days. Now that is a mistake, because I feel like I said, and my sister also, she's had COVID, and she also had the same thing, but she got pneumonia, and she got over it. And then like 3 days later, she started feeling like she was getting a cold again, and they told her again, oh, you have to be in quarantine. And this is the thing. Being in quarantine messes you up psychologically a lot. And so I think it's a bad approach that they keep taking. They keep saying, oh, remain in quarantine. How long am I going to have to be in quarantine before I go crazy and die from mental illness and not from feeling physically sick from the COVID? And so that's another thing too that they need to take into consideration. But now I'm feeling a lot better. Like I said, quarantine 14 days. They told me 3 more days after that. So 17 days. I was in quarantine for 17 days. Symptoms started to slowly subside, and now I'm good.
Oh, okay. Well, here,
Yeah.
let me. This is gonna be my last question for you. But what do you think about the stay-at-home orders that are going around the U.S.? Obviously, I know you've seen the protests. Do you
Yeah.
think that they're appropriate, or do you think, depending on the city and state? What's your just thoughts on that?
Well, I think, and I'm glad that we live in the United States of America and we do have a constitution and we have a Bill of Rights. So we do have freedom of speech and we do have the freedom to go out and protest. Now, obviously, these are trying times. These are difficult times for everybody. You know what I mean? And do people have the right to go out and protest? Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people need to go back to work. Obviously, the economy has taken a big hit. I hear a lot of people around me say, well, why doesn't the government just pay everyone's rent or tell people to go, rent free and like, just tell everybody to stay home? Well, that would be wonderful, but it doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way, because if people don't have to pay rent, what about the property owners? You know what I mean? And what about the people because there's some people that say, oh, I'm good. I have my food stamps. I can go out and eat. But yeah, you have food stamps, but a lot of people didn't have food stamps before the pandemic hit. So then you can't just go to the credit or to the store and shop. So it's like a lot of people, it's very frustrating because, like I said, obviously we have the freedom to protest and things like that. And I feel like people should go out and protest if they want to, and they should be allowed to do that. I feel like the government, not the federal government at this level, but sometimes just like local governments try to take advantage of the things that are going on right now to just exercise absolute power. And we shouldn't let them do that. So if you feel like you need to go out and protest for something, then go ahead and do it. Just be careful about it. You know what I mean? Like, obviously still keep social distancing and like wear your mask and things like that. Just be appropriate about it. But I absolutely support the people that go out and protest. I feel like these people need their jobs back. And one thing that I want to make a distinction about is how biased the media is, right? So there were people protesting prior to this about not paying rent. Right, there's like far leftists out there protesting about not having to pay rent, and they should be allowed to like not do that, and that's fine. And I heard not even one peep from the media talking about this, and there have been people protesting about this, so that's fine, and they have a right to do that. But then all of a sudden, a bunch of not all of them are conservative, but a lot of conservatives or Trump supporters have come out and said, that they want to go back to work. So you have the opposite end. You have the people protesting because they want to go back to work, and you have the people protesting because they don't want to work and they don't want to pay rent. And so who in the media is demonized? The people that want to go back to work. It's ridiculous. And I think the media is just absolutely biased. I think that if the people protesting to go back to work weren't right-leaning or weren't maybe the majority Trump supporters, I think the media will probably completely ignore it and not even care. But again, the media always has to pick a side. They always have to pick somebody to demonize. And what I gotta say to those people or anybody who feels that they need to go out and protest, more power to you. That's why we live in the United States of America. You should be able to go out and protest. And we should see the government should be able to promise some type of job, not some type of welfare, because just a little bit of welfare it consumes people. Then you get a little bit free, then you want more things free, and then you don't want to pay rent. And then if people are out protesting because they don't want to pay rent, they should be out also protesting, be able to protest because they want their jobs back so they can pay their rent that way, so they can feed their families. And so I think that we should take that into consideration. Again, in Massachusetts, you're not really going to see that because there's so many people have been hard hit. People are scared to even go out. You know what I'm saying? But in other states where I've seen the protests, like I said, more power to you. And I definitely support these people. I support anybody who wants to protest for any means. But again, I think my big problem is always just with the media because they're so biased and just like to make people look bad.
Okay, okay. Well, Deanna, I really do appreciate you talking to me about this. I know it could be a sensitive subject and not something easy, to kind of share, but I really appreciate it. And hopefully when we put it out there, some folks will find it really insightful. So thank you for that. And hope you start feeling better really, really soon. You're already looking great. So
Thank you.
thank you for taking the time. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. No problem.